the next question to ask is, do we agree with the doctrine of the golden mean? And you think it's a useful concept for seeking to understand the nature of philosophy? So, you know, certain philosophers like Plato and Bertrand Russell kind of apply the doctrine of the mean in kind of an epistemological sense. So, I mean, in Plato, for example, the golden mean, insofar as it applies to philosophy, he understands it in terms of the philosopher being kind of the mean between two extremes. So, on one extreme, we have somebody who's ignorant, and on the other extreme, we have somebody who is wise. So we have someone who's completely ignorant and someone who's completely wise. And for Plato, the philosopher is somebody who's in the middle. You know, he represents the mean.
Does he use those terms? Why does he use the term wise?
He uses the term wise, yes. So the philosopher is someone who's an intermediary between complete ignorance and complete wisdom. So do we want to agree with that characterization of the philosopher or philosophy more broadly? So, I mean, I can offer my own reflections. I think it's a fairly good characterization of a philosopher. I mean, at least in Plato's sense is the philosopher moderates between complete ignorance and complete wisdom, and so in that sense, the philosopher embodies, in an epistemological sense, you know, in the sense of knowing about the world. The philosopher is someone who is, you know, on an epistemological level, he's someone who has humility. You know, he recognizes the limitations of his knowledge, that he doesn't know everything. So in some sense, he's partly ignorant, you know, because he knows that there are things that he doesn't know. And indeed, you know, there might be some things that he doesn't even know that he doesn't know. Another can of worms.
He's starting to sound like what is his name? Was it Dick Cheney or something like that? There's the things we know, then there's the things we know we don't know, and then there's the unknown unknowns.
All right. Wasn't that Donald Rumsfeld?
Oh yeah, Donald Rumsfeld. I knew it was one of the neocon ghouls, as they people like to call them. There's. I think I kind of want to use wisdom, like maybe an artificial distinction, but maybe just helpful, which is, you know, there's ignorance, there's being all knowing, like sort of like a god, like God. And then there's wisdom, which is knowing things and then knowing that there's things that you don't know. And I think someone who's wise knows what they know and knows what they don't know, and acknowledges that there's going to be things that they don't even know that they don't know.
Right.
I think that's sort of, in my opinion, the definition of being a wise person, which is, you know, being cautious and prudent about knowledge, about your statements, about truth, about matters. You know, you're someone who is considerate. You know, you consider things, you think about things to a large extent, but you don't sit on these things and take them necessarily as certain. At least for the most part, you leave this room for error. This kind of goes back to Aristotle's definition of intelligence. You know, it's the ability to entertain an idea without accepting it. And I think that's a good characterization of a philosopher, is that they're able to understand, acknowledge, consider certain ideas, but they don't have to accept them as truth. But it's interesting to try them on and to see if they fit. In areas where maybe you're missing knowledge, and there's things that you want to, understand.
Yeah, no, I think you hit the you know the hammer. You hit the nail with the hammer there. I think in some sense, being a wise person is to be able to suspend your belief. And to temporarily suspend what it is that you think is to be the case in order to consider maybe the opposite to what you entertain. And, we can see this reflected, I think, even just in the history of human ideas and in the evolution of human thought. And, you think of paradigm shifts, Thomas Kuhn's term, where we shift our fundamental worldview, like the one worldview replaces another worldview, which we see throughout history. So at one point in history, we think that the Earth is flat, and suddenly Columbus comes around, and he discovers continents where we thought that the Earth ended. So this leads to a whole new understanding of the world, which is that the world is actually round. And then we have the scientific revolutions, right? And we have Copernicus figuring out that we're not the center of the universe, but that we actually rotate around the sun. That is. And then we have Newtonian physics, eventually giving way to Einsteinian physics. Not to say that Newtonian physics is to be abandoned completely. It's good for certain applications, but Einsteinian physics explains a lot of things that Newtonian physics can't explain. So that just shifts our perception in that sense. And so therefore, tying this all together, I think you have to have that epistemic humility in that sense. You can't think you have it all figured out. You have to be able to, Bertrand Russell also has this great term of hypothetical sympathy. You have to, in understanding any philosopher's philosophy, or this could even be extended to other thinkers too, like a scientist or someone, you have to be able to sympathize with their worldview to understand why it is that they believe whatever it is to be the case, what are their reasons, and to maybe even just empathize with what it feels like to be that person. That gives you a new perspective on things, and maybe it might even spur you to change your way of looking at things, having adopted a different way of looking at things, or at least seeing that a particular perspective is valid from that person's frame of reference. This is something counselors do, like the famous counselor Carl Rogers kind of emphasizes, right? To be able to take on the other person's frame of reference and to recognize that their frame of reference is valid insofar as that, say they're depressed. Well, they're depressed because all this shit in their life happened, and you can take on that frame of reference and you can see that reason why they behave the way they are, the way they think and feel and behave the way they are, is because because they had maybe a traumatizing childhood or something like that. So now they're chronically feeling sad all the time, and they're lethargic, and they can't get motivated to do things that give them pleasure, and so on and so forth, right? So there's immense value in this ability, to take on a different perspective, to take on a different point of view, to suspend your beliefs and your presuppositions and so on, right? And maybe that's what being wise is. And I guess that validates what we've been talking about as far as epistemic humility goes, and that the philosophers is, this in between point between, total ignorance and total wisdom. He's somewhere in between. He doesn't have it all figured out. we can think of this in more Aristotelian terms. I mean, for Aristotle, the mean was had ethical implications, right? So, to be a philosopher is to kind of be the mean between the extremes of excess and deficiency, insofar as we apply these to the virtues. So, someone who's courageous, he's somewhere in between, say, fearfulness and rashness, right? He's in the middle, maybe he has a little bit of fear, which is healthy, keeps him alert, keeps him aware of the risks involved in a particular situation, but he's not overpowered by that fear. It's not excessive, and he's not too rash, he doesn't think, that he's a god, that he can, that a certain situation that has an element of, say, calculated risk or something, that's not going to be stressful. It probably will be stressful, but the courageous person is someone who can act and do what they think is right in spite of feeling that fear, and not get also carried away by thinking they're too competent at doing something, but they're able to maintain that balanced, that mean between those two extremes. So, I mean, I happen to agree with that. I think we need to be in a place of equilibrium, and a place of balance in order to be, operating at our best, to be, if we're going to exercise our theoretical wisdom and our practical wisdom to the optimal, we need to be in this mean point, this point at which, our virtues are we're neither being excessive in the way that we think and feel and act. We're being neither deficient in the way we think and feel and act, but we're somewhere in the middle.